On February 2nd, 1980, the first details of what would eventually come to be known as one of the greatest scandals of its age were released. According to the FBI, 8 sitting members of Congress had been implicated in an investigation regarding public corruption. The investigation that we would all come to know as ABSCAM was the machination of an unlikely pair, a dedicated FBI agent and a lifelong con man. It would shake people's faith in Congress at the same time that it raised thorny questions over how to conduct investigations. The global anti-corruption blog Gab noted that the details of the operation were so outlandish that they sound like they could have been lifted from a Hollywood movie.
Hauppauge, Long Island is a relatively sleepy hamlet on New York's Long Island. In a way, it might have been too sleepy for an agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation named John F. Good. According to an obituary for Agent Good written in the New York Times in 2016, Mr. Good's bosses had been encouraging him to develop bigger, more important cases. Good's father, Harold, had been an FBI agent involved in the espionage case against Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. In his 1981 book, The Sting Man, Inside ABSCAM, Pulitzer Prize-winning author Robert W. Greene wrote that 5 of Harold Good's 6 children worked for the agency. Born on June 17, 1936, in the Bronx, John was the oldest of those children. He graduated high school in the Bronx, earned a degree in sociology from Fordham University, and served in the Navy. Greene described him as part of a new breed that was slowly, inexorably taking control of the FBI, and said he was careful, methodical, and totally dedicated to his work. According to the New York Times, Good had been a part of an FBI anti-hijack squad aimed at stopping rampant truck hijackings at New York's Kennedy Airport. He'd worked in FBI offices in Illinois and Texas before returning to New York and then being chosen to run the field office in Long Island. Edward A. McDonald, the former chief of the United States Organized Crime Strike Force in Brooklyn, told the New York Times that Good knew how to deal with criminals. He was not a guy who sat at his desk, but was what used to be called a street guy. The investigation did start, in a way, with an investigation of public corruption, but not quite how you might think. The Times explains Mr. Good had been looking into shoddy sewer pipe construction and possible payoffs in 1978 when the Weinberg memo turned up on his desk. It is perhaps fitting that the investigation began with shoddy sewer pipes. Good had a routine FBI inter-office memo. The Pittsburgh office had sent the memo summarizing the case against a confidence man named Mel Weinberg. Reporter Ted Sherman wrote on NewJersey.com in 2013. After reading the report, he began thinking about the opportunities Weinberg might provide as a native guide, leading him to more white-collar prey. Weinberg was a true lifelong criminal. Greene says that his first scam was when he was 6 years old. He stole gold stars from his teacher's desk to misrepresent his success in kindergarten to his mother. Reporter Leslie Maitland wrote in Politico in 2018 that Good decided to offer Weinberg, who was facing a 3-year prison sentence, a deal. Work with the FBI in exchange for suspending his sentence, although he also received minimal pay for his expenses. His girlfriend, Evelyn Knight, who had also been implicated in the fraud, was included in the plea deal. Weinberg seemed an odd choice. Greene describes him. Mel Weinberg doesn't look like the smooth, prototypical con man. He is squat, resembling a gray-bearded fire plug. A few strands of carefully arranged brown hair tenuously bridge his bald plate. Maitland notes a scruffy gray beard and unapologetic comb-over. Good was quoted in Sherman's article explaining why he chose Weinberg. Mel was a fabulous con man. He was a very, very intelligent guy, a little on the crude side, but with a magnificent ability to con people. Good thought that he could use Weinberg's skills. One thing led to another, and we had the potential for a major undercover operation. McDonald said that the relationship between Mr. Good and Mr. Weinberg was sort of a marriage made in heaven, because they were both very imaginative and resourceful. The basics of the investigation were simple, the FBI webpage explains. It all started in July 1978, when we set out to catch New York City underworld figures dealing in stolen art. We set up a bogus company in Long Island, Abdul Enterprises, and thus the name ABSCAM, said to be owned by a wealthy Arab sheikh who wished to invest oil money in valuable artworks. Then we recruited an informer who connected us with crooks, willing to sell us stolen treasures. And that scam produced results. The FBI webpage continues. Within months, we'd recovered 2 paintings worth a combined $1 million. But the investigation started drawing in other crimes, next helping to uncover criminals selling fake stocks and bonds, eventually stopping the sale of $600 million in fraudulent securities. But again, the investigation grew, Sherman reports. One of the many middlemen lured by the smell of Arab money, a convicted swindler named William Rosenberg, who had already done time for stock fraud, approached Weinberg with a deal involving the port of Camden, New Jersey, and the city's dapper mayor, Angelo Ericetti, who Rosenberg intimated was on the take. The FBI explains, our investigation led to southern New Jersey and on to Washington, D.C., our criminal contacts led us to politicians in Camden who were willing to offer bribes to get our business, a gambling license, to Atlantic City. Then, when we expressed interest in their suggestion to get the Sheikh asylum in the U.S., these corrupt politicians arranged for us to meet some U.S. congressman who could make it happen with private legislation. Ericetti was later convicted of not only accepting a bribe in exchange for helping to obtain a casino license, but introducing Weinberg as the representative of the wealthy sheikh to several politicians. The website of the University of Virginia Law School writes, ABSCAM soon transformed into the widest dragnet ever cast to prove wrongdoing on the part of public officials. Ericetti, still believing the agent's cover story, became a pipeline to prominent politicians. Agents then videotaped the meetings, where bribes were offered. Maitland writes that the FBI would not have started an investigation of members of Congress, but were obligated to follow the evidence when it came. She quotes Edward R. Corman, the U.S. Attorney in New York at the time. Once it started going, the department couldn't stop it, especially since there was a Democratic administration in the White House and most of the suspected officials were Democrats. In essence, it would have appeared corrupt not to investigate at that point. Maitland reported in the New York Times in 1980 that the supposed sheikh was given the name Kambir Abdul Rahman. The agents, claiming to represent a wealthy Arab sheikh and in some instances posing as Arab sheikhs, met with officials throughout 1979 in a variety of locations. These included a modern 4-story office building in Holbrook, Long Island, a condominium in Ventnor, New Jersey, a yacht moored off the coast of Florida, a townhouse in the Georgetown section of Washington, the Playboy Club at Gorge, New Jersey, and the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. Weinberg complained frequently about the budget. Green writes, the Bureau had allocated $32,000 to conduct the white-collar crime scheme. Bureau cost accountants had not reckoned on Mel Weinberg, however. At times, the budget produced almost comic choices. When told that they couldn't afford the food prices at the Plaza Hotel where a meeting was being held, Weinberg brought corned beef sandwiches. It should have seemed strange that an Arab sheikh would bring kosher food. Green writes that Weinberg told the FBI, we'll tell the guy this sheikh admires Jews so much that he only eats Jewish food when he's out of the country. When the excuse was accepted by the mark, Weinberg later said he thought he could get away with anything. At one reception on the yacht, which was called the Left Hand, one of the faux sheikhs presented a tribal dagger to Ericetti. Green explains Ericetti, his eyes glistening, promised his friendship and aid to the sheikh. Weinberg had purchased the dagger at an Athens flea market for $2.75. As a headquarters for Abdul Enterprises, agents sublet a house in Washington, according to Time magazine, for $1,200 a month from a reporter from the Washington Post who had been assigned temporarily to New York City. The furniture used to make the office look expensive was borrowed from the Smithsonian Institution. Meetings took place, Time reports, under lights so bright that the lawmakers squinted. These lights had been installed to facilitate the secret videotaping, but the sheikh's aide explained that he kept them bright because he missed the blazing sun of his homeland. The sting might have continued, except the journal CQ Almanac reported in 1980, although the probe's existence had been conducted in secret for almost 2 years, law enforcement authorities said they learned in late January that a number of news organizations were preparing reports on the investigation's findings. The authorities decided to quickly disband the undercover operation, notify the suspects, and begin organizing the evidence. The first allegations of congressional wrongdoing were reported February 2nd by the Long Island newspaper Newsday. The same day, NBC News stationed bands in front of the homes of several of the members in order to film FBI agents informing the individuals that they'd become entangled in the FBI's undercover web. The FBI writes that when the dust settled, 1 senator, 6 congressmen, and more than a dozen other criminals and corrupt officials were arrested and found guilty. But there was controversy from the start. The leaks to the press would be the first of many controversies regarding the investigation. 4 Philadelphia officials were indicted in the probe. Among the first to be tried in the case, they asked that the charges be dropped under the complaint that, as the information had been leaked, the jury pool was biased. An investigation before federal judge John Fulman failed to identify the source of the leaks. Edwin Warner notes in Time magazine in 1980 that the leaks even disturbed Watergate prosecutor Archibald Cox. Little leaks are one thing. Systematically giving out information on this scale raises real worries about the sensitivity of the people engaged in the administration of justice. Pullman elected, however, not to dismiss the case. Others questioned Weinberg, the key witness in the case and a convicted felon, whom Maitland described as a longtime FBI informant with a madcap history of illegal exploits, credibility. Congress also worried whether the investigation was targeting government officials for revenge over congressional investigations. Tyson Witten wrote on the website of Temple University Law School, some say that ABSCAM and its pivoting towards targeting political officials was in revenge for how the legislative branch came at the national intelligence agencies for their part in the Watergate scandal of 1972. While these claims are unsubstantiated, it reflects the mindset of those that set the rules of the game after ABSCAM concluded. Law enforcement officials countered that congressional scrutiny of the investigation was retaliatory, as Maitland noted in Time magazine. No questions were raised, they suggest, when those caught in traps laid by play-acting agents were prostitutes, thieves, and heroin dealers. The protest raised on Capitol Hill, they maintain, has been sparked by ABSCAM's success in capturing so many public officials in crimes where videotaped evidence almost guaranteed guilty verdicts. Virtually all the accused denied any wrongdoing, some offering excuses that Time described as novel. South Carolina Congressman John Jenrette claimed that agents had gotten him drunk. Time quoted him, "I was in bad shape," he recalled. "It was a full moon and I had 3 drinks, or I had 3 drinks and it was a half moon." New Jersey State Senator Joseph Maressa called the $10,000 in cash he accepted legal fees. Florida Congressman Richard Kelly, the only Republican member of Congress charged, claimed that he had accepted $25,000 as part of his own investigation of corruption. Perhaps the largest complaint was that the scam amounted to entrapment. New Jersey Democrat Harrison Williams Jr., the only member of the U.S. Senate charged, initially fought off efforts to expel him from the Senate, but eventually resigned in 1982, the year before his term would have ended. If he had been expelled, CNN noted in 2001, it would have been the first expulsion from the Senate since the Civil War. In his resignation speech, he said, "I know I broke no laws. I believe time, history, and Almighty God will vindicate me." 2 of the cases were actually thrown out by federal judges on the argument that the FBI had essentially created crimes that would not otherwise have existed. The complaint was supported by the American Civil Liberties Union, but both cases were later reinstated on appeal. In terms of the question of entrapment, Maitland wrote in Time, "Passionate arguments exist on both sides." But Warner noted, many defendants plead entrapment, but few win acquittal on that basis. In the end, the appeals failed. Everyone charged was convicted by separate juries. The FBI writes, like many high-profile, sensitive investigations, ABSCAM generated its share of controversy. In particular, questions were raised about whether our undercover efforts led to entrapment. The courts ruled otherwise, upholding all convictions. Complaints about FBI methods were in essence ruled to be irrelevant in the face of overwhelming evidence. Despite some flaws in the investigation, the FBI had maintained careful control. The editors of the global anti-corruption blog opine the fact that these convictions stuck is a reflection of the fact that although the undercover FBI agents involved in ABSCAM got very close to that fine line that separates legal deception from unlawful entrapment, the FBI had been scrupulous about staying on the right side of that line. Time noted that department attorneys closely monitored every transaction where a bribe was offered. The judge, in the case of Congressman Kelly, decided that any questionable conduct by the FBI simply did not reach intolerable levels. The video evidence was damning and overwhelming. Philadelphia Congressman Michael Ozzie Myers said on tape, "You're going about this the right way. I'm going to tell you something real simple and short. Money talks in this business, and bullshit walks. It works the same way down in Washington." Jenrette said, "I've got larceny in my blood. I'd take it in a goddamn minute." Time noted a particular irony. The agency seemed to have fearlessly bitten the hand that feeds it. Congress had appropriated about $3 million for FBI undercover operations in the past year, and now it appears that the FBI, in an ironic way, returned some of that money to a few greedy members of Congress. But reporter Richard Leiby noted a much more disturbing irony in 2013. Today, offering bribes in exchange for legislation seems almost quaint. Good told him, "The lobbyists do the same things we did, only to a much greater degree." Despite all the attention it received at the time, ABSCAM was really largely forgotten when in 2013 the film American Hustle, which was based on the sting, was released. But if everything you know about ABSCAM comes from American Hustle, understand that even the filmmaker said of the historical accuracy of their film, some of this actually happened.
Most of the action of the film was, well, to put it mildly, embellished. John Good merely said, well, if they just did it the way that ABSCAM was done, it would have been a very dull movie. John Good passed away in 2016. But there was another irony that came about because of the film. As the Washington Post notes, Melvin Weinberg, who remember was a career criminal who only escaped jail time by agreeing to participate in the sting, was paid $250,000 by filmmakers for the rights to his life story. ABSCAM produced one more big payout, the Post opined. Melvin Weinberg passed away in 2018. Not every member of Congress who was approached was charged, but according to the FBI, only one member of Congress abjectly refused the bribe and contacted the FBI as he should have, and that was South Dakota Senator Larry Pressler. And Pressler stated one final irony when on the CBS Evening News they called him a hero. He says, "I don't consider myself a hero." What have we come to if turning down a bribe is heroic? I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of The History Guy, and if you did, please feel free to like and subscribe and share The History Guy with your friends. And if you also believe that history deserves to be remembered, then you can support The History Guy as a member on YouTube, a supporter on our community at Locals, or as a patron on Patreon. You can also check out our great merchandise shop or book a special message from The History Guy on Cameo. Will you stay with me? Oh no, cat out of control. Cat out of control.